my first 2 semesters were miserable. Like I literally failed every class because I hadn't really changed my lifestyle. And I remember I got expelled from community college because academic expulsion.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Well, welcome to Navigating Life.
Thank you.
Yes. Would you share a little bit about yourself? Like, what do you do? Anything you would like to share with us?
Okay. Well, currently I work for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. I'm a program supervisor, program director, so I have 3 programs that I supervise in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. They're rehabilitation programs, so we try to get inmates prepared for either a longer term in prison or to come home and to be productive citizens when they get home. So I get to do that every day. It's a blessing. Before that, the largest part of my career, early on, I was a teacher, and I was able to teach school with mostly middle school kids, and that was an awesome experience to get to do that. And from there I moved into juvenile probation, and that's where I spent the bulk of my career before I retired. And now I'm working at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
Cool. Dan, I know you've had a difficult young adult phase.
I did.
So would you mind sharing with us that difficult journey with us, please?
Absolutely. So I really love the navigating life.
Thank you.
That's an awesome title for this podcast because we do have to navigate life. We have to walk through step by step with a consciousness of who we are and where we're going. And in my younger life, well, I did not have any consciousness about anything. I didn't give it much thought, really, from one minute to the next. In high school, I was a very poor student because most of the time I didn't attend. It was one of those things. It was like there was better and more fun things to do, in my opinion, at the time than to go to school. And I wasn't a good student. And when you're not a good student, you don't get a lot of at least in those days, you didn't get a lot of encouragement from your teachers. And I cannot really remember any teachers in my middle school or high school years that had like any significant impact on my life. Like, well, they may have, but I don't remember a positive impact for sure. And I talk to people all the time that are older than me, and they're like, "Oh, remember Mrs. So and So and Mr. So and So," and I couldn't tell you because I wasn't engaged, because I didn't feel like I belonged there. I felt like I should be somewhere else, and so I was. And so part of that difficult journey was just not having a good education. I did graduate high school. I graduated late because I didn't go to school. And kind of when everybody started figuring that out, I kind of had to follow the rules and go to school. So I was able to graduate. But then I just went through life. I was a bartender, and I waited tables at different places. I moved out of my house when I was 18 years old, and had a roommate, and we just kind of played and partied all the time. That's what that was what our life consisted of. Was just when you're a bartender, it's make a drink and take a drink and make a drink and take a drink, and I kind of stayed in that state of being for a long period of time. Probably wasn't until, and that was after high school, wasn't until my mid-20s that I had an experience that kind of woke me up. Not really. I just got tired, and just it was just the same old, and decided to go to college. Just on the way to work one day, I had just dealt with a broken down car and had to get a jump start, and had 4 bald tires on my car, and I just had to sit down and say, what am I doing and where am I going? And the community college was on my way to my job. So I literally pulled into the parking lot of the community college and asked some questions about where to go and how to get involved, and I did that, and my first 2 semesters were miserable. Like I literally failed every class because I hadn't really changed my lifestyle. Working full time, trying to struggle, pay bills, change bulb tires from time to time, and buy new batteries for my car as it would break down. It was just, and I remember I got expelled from community college because academic expulsion. And, and as I was talking to the counselor, she's like, "Well, what is it that you would like to do?" And she opened up a big book. I'll never forget the big book in my whole life. It was a binder and it was huge. And she started going through these possibilities of trades, none of which appealed to me. Most of them were manual labor outside, working hard. And I'm like, and so finally she looked at me. She said, "Well, what is it exactly that you think you would like to do?" And I said, "You know what? I'd like to be a teacher." And she literally gut laughed. Like, I mean, it was from the deepest laugh I think I've ever heard in my whole life. And she looked at me and she said, "How can you teach if you can't learn?" And that stuck with me pretty hard. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't know, but that's what I want to do. I was able to convince her to let me come back and take classes. She did not expel me at that time. And I had a teacher that said, "Your problem is you never learned how to learn because you didn't go to school. So you don't have the skill set that you need." And that teacher worked with me and taught me how to study and how to learn and how to prioritize my time because I was still working, full time. I still had 2 jobs at the time. But
this was in community college?
Community college. And then from there, I moved from Dallas to Houston and went to the University of Houston for a couple of semesters. And then I transferred out to Sam Houston, where I was able to graduate and get my degree and become a teacher for the first 10 years of my career. So it was a goal, and I set it, and I did learn how to learn. And it was such a privilege for me to be able to help other people learn how to learn. But I still, Beaulah, wasn't really navigating life. Like I was just kind of moving through life. Like I didn't have any real direction. I was kind of getting to do some things I wanted to do and kind of had to grow up a little faster than I thought I needed to, even though I was already significantly older by this time. There was a school in Second Ward, Houston, Texas, that offered me an interview, and so I drove out there, and literally when I got to the interview, I kept driving. I'm like, I don't even, I'm scared to death to even be in this neighborhood. It was a different neighborhood, lots of gang graffiti, and I didn't really know anything about that. Barbed wire around the school, fences with barbed wire around the school, and so I just kept driving. But then I said, well, it's rude not to go. So I turned around and I went back to the interview, and they literally hired me on the spot. I was like, well, they offered me the job. And I'm like, can I think about it? I didn't say that, but I thought of it. So I accepted it because it was a challenge, and I like challenges. Ended up becoming the principal of that school for a short period of time. Yes, I did. And then from there, I moved to another school. After a few years, I moved to another school, which was not as inner city, but still, which is where I met my wife, Denise. So she was attending the church that was attached to the school, and I went to the church that was attached to the school, and we were able to meet. I actually taught her cousins in the 6th and 7th grade. So that was kind of an interesting way that me not navigating life as I see God was navigating me in that direction, which set me up for where I am now. And through teaching, I ended up with probation. Because I loved working with those kids who were involved in the gang life and involved in the selling drugs on the street corner and the chaotic home life, and my heart really went out to them. So I'm like, how can I be more involved in that? What's a career that I could do? That was probably one of the first times that I made a conscious decision. And I was already married by this time, and I did make a conscious decision to get married. But as far as my career and my life, I made a conscious decision to go into probation so that I could have more direct contact. And through that, for a number of years, 17, 18 years, that's what I did. And I was a gang officer, so I really got to work very closely with the gang kids. And my goal was not to lock them up, but was to teach them about the importance and the safety of following rules and why we do that, and then try to really sow into their lives to try to get them to think about things differently. And I was at my wife's uncle's funeral, and there was a a voice across the room that called my name, and it was my last name, Mr. Hicks, I'm like, well, who would call me that? This is like family, and some of them, granted, I didn't know well, but it turns out I supervised him on probation, and he was a cousin, I guess maybe once removed or something. Lived with a relative that was not a part of my wife's family, so I didn't associate the two together. But he asked me if I remembered him, and I'm like, yes, kind of. Not really, because there was so many, and this had been years later. But he told me, he said, you put me in jail," and I said, "I did." And I said, "I don't think so." I said, "You probably put yourself." And he kind of smiled, and he said, "You're right." He said, "You did everything you could to try to get me to change, and I would not." And he said, "I remember the conversations we had, and I didn't listen to you." And he said, "So I ended up spending a number of years locked up." And he said, "And I blamed you, and I hated you for a long time, until one day I figured out that it wasn't you, it was me." And he just reached over and gave me the biggest hug. And he said, "Thank you for everything that you tried to do." And he introduced me to his wife and his children. And he was quite a success story. And I was really happy to see that. He has a nice career going now. And he's doing very well. So those stories are always nice to be able to hear those.
Yeah, that's so rewarding.
Very rewarding.
So not only did you have a turbulent young adult life, but also as a young married, you had challenges. Would you like to share a little bit about that journey, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, I will be happy to talk about that a little bit with you. So I was 33 when I met my wife. 32, 33. We got married when I was 33. We only dated for 6 months. We knew each other for 6 months from the time that we met to the time that we got married.
Okay.
My wife was already 30 years old at the time. She's 3 years younger than I am. So we had both lived a life of adulthood and independence on our own for a long time when we met. And when I met my wife, Denise, I didn't even need to meet anybody else, because I knew almost instantly that was who I needed to spend the rest of my life with. She was amazing, and she was awesome. I said earlier that I had taught her cousins in school, so we were introduced by their parents, and went out cautiously at first, and then and sort of double dated with them, and did some things like that. But then we got to know each other very well, and then I think we literally, I think our first date was her birthday, which is in September, and then by December I was proposing, and then by March we were getting married, because that correlated with my spring break. So so I had a week, so we could do something during that week.
Why not get married?
So I kind of gave her the date. Said, "Here's what we're gonna do," and she's like, "Oh, okay, that's great." So we did that. But so we were two adults trying to blend our households together, and that's a rough start for anybody when you're already set in your ways, and you already have ideas about what life should look like. Even though I still at this time kind of really don't believe I was navigating. I must have been, because I was doing some things. And the one amazing thing about my wife is that, because when you work at a school like I work at, she knew how much I made, because it's published in the church bulletin every week. So, and so she's like, "Well," I said, "Yeah, we may have to make some adjustments." So, teachers in private schools they're not overly well paid, but it was okay. It was good enough, and so I knew right then that I didn't have to work hard to be overly impressive with her, because she already knew pretty much so everything there was to know. But we moved in together. We got married and we moved in together, and problems ensued fairly quickly within our marriage. Bickering and arguing, very different personalities, very different expectations, very different ways of just. I'm not a morning person. It's just not my thing, and I don't like to have conversations in the morning. And so I'm sort of packing my stuff to get out the door, and she's like, "So what do you want for dinner tonight?" And I'm like, "I haven't even had breakfast. I have no idea what I want for dinner, and I don't care." And I would say things like that, and so of course that would trigger some emotions and some some arguments, and things literally continue to get worse and not better. Like we just continue to fight and bicker and argue, pretty much so constantly. We had very few moments together that we were not bickering and arguing about something, and I remember that. And I also remember, and both of us are very committed and stubborn individuals. So we weren't thinking like divorce right then, but I started thinking about, I don't even know. I mean, I don't know. And at the time, to be honest with you, and I don't want to shortchange anything, but I was going to church because I worked at a school that was attached to a church, but I didn't really have a relationship with God, and I didn't really know much about God, even though I also taught the catechism. I still didn't know a whole lot about God, right? But I remember telling God, well, what did I do to deserve this? Like, what did I do? Like, did I do something really bad? Was I really just this horrible human? And now I'm going to have to pay for this forever and ever. That was my prayer to God. What did I do to deserve this? One day, that I was seriously contemplating leaving. Matter of fact, carrying clothes in arms full to my car and throwing them in the back seat. Had nowhere to go. Didn't know what I was going to do, but I thought, didn't want to be like this. And she said, well, you might want to wait a minute because I took a pregnancy test and let's see what the results are. And I was like, and of course she was pregnant. This was a couple of years into our marriage, roughly. So we sat down and we talked, and we said, well, now there's another person that's coming into our lives, and we have to get this together. And we still didn't. We argued much during her pregnancy, a lot about different things, and I remember, and we don't talk about this even much today, but I remember that, you used to have to go to those birthing classes or whatever they called it back in the day. It was Labaz, that's the word. So I had to go to those, and I remember even leaving those classes and arguing about something. And one day she just made the comment to me, and she said, look at all the other couples in there. They're so happy and they're so in love. And here we are, we don't even want to be in the same room. And I'm like, but we don't know that they're really happy. Like, come on, they're just there. She goes, yeah, but at least they know how to make us think that way, because I don't even feel that way when we're in there, and we don't look like we are either. And I'm like, that's true. So child was born, had a son. It was great. Life was good for a little while, but then, the whole parenting issues come up. I want to parent this way, you want to parent that way. And so we had those issues in front of us as well. I was like, he's a boy. We need to, not over baby him. We don't want to over mother him. We want to, won't want to dote on him. And, so he's got to be a boy, all man, all the time. And I had really firm limits and boundaries when it came, because I was a probation officer, and I knew how to set limits and boundaries, and you can't cross here, and if I tell you to do this, you need to do this. And hers were a little more fluid. And it would just go all over me. I was just like, oh my God, we're gonna kill him, we can't do that. And she would say, no, I'm his mother. And so we had those issues on top of what our other issues already were. You have good friends who are praying for you and discipling you. And Denise had good friends who were praying for us and discipling her. Things started to look a little bit different in our marriage at that point. We started to listen a little more, take a little more time. But I remember the moment for me, Beaulah, was I was on my phone in the car. We were driving. I was driving, and she was on the other end, and we were arguing. And she said, how come you're never nice to me? And I kind of laughed, and I said, well, because you're never nice to me. And she said, so let me understand. I have to be nice first before you will even try to be nice. I said, well, that's kind of the way life is. People are nice to people who are nice to them, and they're not nice to people who are not nice to them. And I hung up the phone, because I was like, I can't believe she's asking me a ridiculous question like that. I don't have time for ridiculousness. So I hung up the phone, but it resonated with me. And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I said, I'm never nice to my wife. Nothing she could do, I didn't care. I just wasn't nice. And I realized that. And I still thought my prideful self was still, she's not. I could convince myself very quickly that she's not nice to me, so I'm just not going to be nice. I refuse. And I think right about the same time, the Holy Spirit really worked with us and convicted us to say, be nice, just be nice. And I know I'm not protecting, but be nice. So we practiced that. We practiced being nice and being charitable and understanding when somebody may not have a good day, and our days were hard at work. And so we put that into a very unconscious practice. I'm not sure it was deliberate, but I know the deliberateness for me was that I needed to learn to get out of my own way and be nice. And it was amazing how God worked that out in our lives. We quit arguing basically because we were nice. Right about that time, I don't remember the name of the movie, but Fireproof? I think it was Fireproof. The movie Fireproof came out, and it kind of talked about the similar thing, and friends of ours were encouraging us to watch it, and I'm like, But I did watch it, and I remember thinking that, while we didn't have those exact struggles, we still had the struggles in our marriage of a lack of communication. And when we did communicate, it was poor communication. So just starting on the very basic principle of being nice. Um, and God really started working it out for us. He really put it in a perspective that I would not have believed could have been the case. If you know Denise and I well, we have a relationship that is wonderful. We still bicker with each other. Mostly it's playful. But we don't argue. There's really no reason to argue much anymore. And if we do catch ourselves arguing, it stops very quickly. God has been really good, and He has really put people in our lives that have spoken into us. And so Denise and I, we try to listen, and we try to be open and obedient. We try to give that back where we can. If I see anybody that I think might be struggling, that they're the first people that I'll reach out to. I have men friends in my life that hold me accountable. If I say anything, they're like, that's your wife. Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that. So I think that's, while we did have a very rough marriage in the beginning, now my statement is, what did I do to deserve this? So it changed from one meaning to the other meaning, the exact same question to God, but with a whole different heart perspective behind it.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So during those 10 years of struggle in your marriage, did you seek out counseling?
We did, Beaulah. We absolutely did. Secular counseling at first, and we literally got fired, I think, from 3 marriage counselors. And I use the word fired sort of lightly, but basically it was like we'd go in for a session and they'd say, well, I think this needs to be our last session, and maybe somebody else can do a better job helping you because I don't seem to be getting through. And I remember even one time we were both kind of laughing about it because I was like, well, I think it was on the third one. We're both kind of like, we just must be unable to be helped. And we did try some Christian marriage counseling from somebody that my wife found. And I think he was able to help her, but he really wasn't able to speak into me because partly because of me, because I wasn't ready to hear what he was trying to tell me. And also, I think that when somebody's not ready to hear something and you continue to try to tell them something, that may not be the very best tact to take.
Yeah.
So I think that was a little bit of inexperience there. And I'm not judging because I know his heart was good and I know he was trying. But it didn't make me go, oh yeah, like I need to fix that. Like it didn't resonate with me at all. I think it did help. He was able to help Denise, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very, very grateful. But it just didn't really help me. And so after that, no, we did not pursue any more marriage counseling after that. I think equally as valuable or even more valuable is like my wife would go on these women's retreats, and she would come home and she would just be filled. Like something that I couldn't do for her, but a group of women she was able to get together with and just be filled. And men's retreats are similar. You can just be able to just be filled with good information and good sewing into. And I think that's good for a relationship. So
Dan, when you were really having difficulty in your marriage and you seeked out counseling too, so what really helped you to come on the other side of this difficult marriage situation you were in?
I, Again, in hindsight, I would have to say that the biggest help was just learning who we were, like through friends that were praying for us and with us, correcting us when we needed correction. Um, I think that made the biggest difference. Like just you know, I believe that marriage is important to God. I don't believe God wants you to be in a marriage that's not good. Um, so he wants us to make it good. And the way to make it good is through him. Obviously there's some extremes and there's some exceptions and nobody would deny that.
Yeah.
But I think if God brought us together, then we are to really work to work that out. That's our job. That's what we're called to do. I think marriage is a covenant relationship. I do not believe that it's a contractual relationship, although it is according to the state and the government. But I believe it's a covenant relationship, and I believe that as we move closer in our personal walk with God, then we move closer in our personal walk with our marriage. I just think that that's what probably helped the most, and God just helped me to navigate down paths, and he put people in my way and roadblocks that said, no, don't go that way, go this way. And it's up to me to choose to go that way. But when I went that way, it worked out beautifully. I mean, my life is not spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. It's normal, and it's good. It's good normal, right? But if I had been the director, if I had been navigating myself, this isn't where I'd be. I would be in a completely different place. I had to be able to listen and able to allow God to navigate me and set up roadblocks and say, no, don't go there. That's not a good place to go. Here's where I need you to be. My career, my marriage. If I had picked all of that myself, it would not have ended up like it is today. And then I'm very, while I say there's nothing extraordinary about my life, I'm very blessed in my life. I'm very blessed to be where I am. And I realize that, and I realize that the fortune that God has bestowed upon me to give me the family that I have, the friends that I have, the career path that I've been able to take. It's been good. He's been good. He's been very gracious.
I'm happy. I'm happy for you.
Me too.
What is one piece of advice that you can give our audience to say, hey, this has helped me? This is what I learned.
Well, that's a good question, Beaulah. It's a hard question because it's a good question because, again, the navigating life, I didn't feel like I was. I felt like I was sort of just existing. I think when I took a conscious look at my life, when I woke up and said, wait a minute, this is not where I need to be. I need to be something different. I think that was a trigger point for me. And I think the most helpful thing I can do to somebody or tell somebody is to sit down and evaluate where you're at and where you'd like to be. And it can be hard because sometimes we don't even know where we want to be. Like we have some lofty goals or something that we might want to obtain, but what's realistic and where can we get, and how do we get there? So I think just having people in my life that supported me and praised me. So while in my young adulthood and in my early childhood, while I was my own worst enemy would be, I guess I had a very supporting and loving family. Oh my goodness. I mean, I couldn't say enough about I didn't have those challenges. Those were not challenges that I had. I must have just created my own challenges, would be my guess. It wasn't like I didn't have a family that was there for me. It wasn't like I came from any horrendous circumstances like the people that I've gotten to work with that have come from those. I did not. And that's what I mean. There's nothing remarkable about my life other than my own self-imposed challenges possibly, but then I think the biggest help would just be, well, first of all, I fully believe that we have to have a relationship with our Lord and Savior. I think that's the key to everything. And I'm still working on that. I'm still trying to grow that relationship, but I think that would be the biggest help. But even before that, just sit down and determine who you're going to be. And then navigate it, like walk with people to help you that navigate it correctly.
I loved what she said. It's really profound. when she said that, how can you teach if you can't learn?
So while you see that as profoundness, I saw that as, what do you, I mean, basically I felt like she was calling me stupid.
Mm,
And it punched me in my gut, like,
mm.
because I'm like, maybe I am, like it was not a good, like, I hear
In a
the way you're
positive,
hearing it
yeah.
now that you turn it back to me like that, but for the last 40 plus years, to me it's been, why would she say something? We have to, our words are really important, and
Yeah.
we don't think about them when we're saying them. And maybe she meant it exactly the way you said it, but it's not the way I received it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a large part of our communication issues, is that sometimes we receive things from people that that's not what they meant at all. They
Yeah.
actually meant this, but then it resonates with us and it settles in us, and it causes an issue in her pride. It causes an issue in our character. It causes some, words are profound.
Yeah.
And in young life, and in married life, and now older life, I am practicing, and it is a practice, Beaulah,
Yeah.
to be a little bit different with my words
Yeah.
and choose them a little more carefully. I'm not always successful by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly now in the career that I'm in, rehabilitating people, um, really important to choose your words so that they can be received.
Yeah.
They have to be received.
Yeah. That's true. And also, I mean, the other thing too is where we're at, right? When you said, like, even though it's being positive is being said, but the way we're wired and what you're hearing is through the filter of your perception. Like, this is how you see it. You said, oh, she thinks I'm stupid, right? But I don't think that she probably meant that, right? Maybe, right? But like to say, but that is really like looking at that statement as that goes any part of our life, right? How can we teach if we can't learn? How can, like, literally parenting, mirror, I mean, you can take anything, and I feel like that's an amazing quote. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no,
It's like
is
it's an amazing quote.
certainly a catalyst, if nothing else. Like,
Yeah,
it was a catalyst for me.
yeah, that's what I mean. Like, because that's
Absolutely.
when you were like, you know what, I'm gonna make some changes,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's when you were like, okay, you didn't like all the choices, options that she gave you. You were like, I'm gonna be a teacher, but obviously, but I'm glad it worked out. That path
Yeah.
kind of worked out for you.
And the better news is the subject that I struggled in the most in college was the subject that I landed teaching. So
which is what?
it would be math.
Math?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I struggled the most. I had this brain block with math forever. Just could not do math to save my life.
Right.
And then one day my brain lit up to it, and I was like, "Oh, that's not that hard."
Yeah.
And again, I had a teacher that was willing to put some time into me and show me, this is how we do it. And I was able to do it. And I taught, middle school math, nothing rocket science
Yeah.
or anything, but still, I was able to do that. So
Yeah.
that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, I really do appreciate teachers because they make
Mhm.
such a huge impact in the
That's it.
lives of kids and maybe changing the trajectory of their life,
100%.
So thank you, teachers. If you're a teacher and if you're watching, thank you so much. We
100%.
really appreciate. Thank you for being a teacher. And I'm like you had given an example and know that you definitely impacted several lives through your career and not just as a teacher, but also as a probation officer. Yeah. What have you learned from your journey of having a difficult young adult life and early marriage, having difficulties? What life lessons have you learned?
Okay. So, I think the biggest life lesson that I've had to learn, and that I think I'm maybe still learning, but I'm certainly working on it, and I think I've improved on it, is just learning that I don't have all the answers. Like, I want to be the guy with all the answers. I think most men, we're fixers. Like, we want to just fix. We want to get in there and just put it to rest and fix it. I've had to learn that I don't have all the answers. Like I'd like to. I'd like to fix things. When I see a problem, I tell somebody, well, here's your problem. And I do it now when I'm counseling with some of the people that I work with. I'm telling them, well, can't you see? Here's the problem, and here's how we fix it. And sometimes they'll just look at me like, that didn't make any sense at all. And to me, it makes a lot of sense, but but it doesn't to the person that I'm trying to get the information to. So I don't always have all the answers. I'd love to have all the answers. I'd love to be able to fix a problem. I actually learned that from a 13 or 14-year-old boy one time. Like, it was a long time ago, and I was his probation officer, and he and I were going at it. Like, I was explaining to him life and how he needed to navigate it and do these things. And he just looked at me and he said, "You don't know me." And I said, "Of course I know you." And he's like, "You don't know me because you're talking to me as if you understood my life, and you don't." I said, of course, I'm paraphrasing when I speak for him, but basically he was telling me, you don't know a darn thing about me. And I kept telling him, I do. And so he gave me examples. He said, "So, like, you talk about your life all the time and how you go on camping trips with your son, and you go out of town with your family on vacation, and you do." And he said, "Do you know, Mr. Hicks, the furthest I've ever been in my entire life is when I have to take 2 buses and a city train to get to your office to see you once a week. That's as far as I've ever been." He said, "Nobody takes me camping. Nobody takes me and does this with me. And then you want to sit here and try to tell me how to get through life as if you know me, and you don't." And I drove away from that conversation still feeling like I was completely right. And I got about halfway home, and I remembered it, just Holy Spirit moment, like, wow, he's really right. I don't, and I can't speak into his life. And not only because I don't understand it, but I've never even begun to live what he lives.
Yeah.
I've never begun to live what he lives. I've never even experienced a small part of what he's experienced. So that impacted me to start a program, which I ran for 10 years through the probation department. It was called the Rhema program. It was, Rhema is a word that when you hear it, it penetrates and it sticks to you forever. So it's a spoken word that never leaves. And I realized at that moment I may not have that word for everybody. So I needed to find a team that could help me. So I went out and I found people who looked more like the people that I was working with, but thought more like the way that I thought. And what a great combination that turned out to be. And that program literally ran for about 10 years, and it was a beautiful, right when I left that job to do this is when it stopped. But it's a great program, and it all came from that conversation. So I think the life lesson in that is just knowing that you may not have all the answers, but be willing to learn and listen and redirect when you need to.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. What is one piece of advice that you might give to, a young married couple or just married couple that are struggling in their marriage? The lessons that you have learned from your struggles.
So I think it's very important to get connected with your community, with church community for me, which is really which was key. Having a relationship with God and understanding who He is in a marriage, and right along with that, God placed so many people in my life that helped me navigate those paths, helped me to understand. My friends and my mentors and people who discipled me, Julie, who discipled me, and Denise at the same time, could be firm, fair, and consistent, right? So you're doing this really well, but you really need to work on this, right? And everybody needs that. So even when I try to help people navigate their marriage, I still need somebody to speak into my life as well. We need that. We just need that. So I think that that's one lesson that I learned, that I don't have all the answers, and there's a lot of people out there that have different answers than I have, and then I have to be a willing person to learn that maybe I wasn't right in the first place. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dan, for coming on the podcast and sharing your story, your journey with us, being vulnerable. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being here. If this has resonated with you, we would appreciate if you can subscribe to our channel, click the bell notification, and share it with a friend that needs this to hear this story, that is maybe in a young adult or maybe struggling in marriage, that needs hope. We really appreciate this community on YouTube. Thank you for watching us. We really appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.